On July 20th, 1969, two human beings stood on the surface of another world. But here is the number that will stop you cold. It took only 66 years to go from the first powered flight to walking on the moon. 66 years. That is within a single human lifetime. The speed at which humanity conquered space is almost incomprehensible, and the full story is far stranger and more dramatic than most people ever learn. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly how the space age began, who really drove it forward, and what moments nearly ended the entire program before it ever reached its greatest triumphs. We will cover the rocket pioneers, the Cold War race that changed everything, the disasters nobody wanted to talk about, and the surprising direction space exploration is heading right now. And there is one chapter in this story that most documentaries skip entirely, because it reveals just how close we came to never reaching the moon at all. To understand space exploration, you first have to understand rockets. The fundamental science was not invented by governments or militaries. It was dreamed up by obsessive individuals working in near-total obscurity. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, a Russian schoolteacher who was almost entirely deaf, published the core mathematics of rocket propulsion in 1903, the same year the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk. He never built a rocket. He simply sat in a small house and calculated how it could be done. His work laid the theoretical foundation for everything that followed. Robert Goddard in America actually built the things. In 1926, he launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket in a field in Massachusetts. It flew for 2.5 seconds and reached an altitude of about 12 meters. The press mocked him viciously. The New York Times published an editorial suggesting Goddard did not understand basic physics. They printed a correction the day after Apollo 11 launched. Goddard's patents and research, largely ignored during his lifetime, became the blueprint for modern rocketry. In Germany, a group of enthusiasts called the Verein für Raumschifffahrt, the Society for Space Travel, were conducting their own experiments through the late 1920s and early 1930s. Among them was a young engineer named Wernher von Braun. When the Nazi government came to power, the military saw the potential immediately. The civilian rocket club was absorbed. Von Braun and his team were given vast resources and set to work on a weapon. The result was the VA-2, the world's first ballistic missile. By 1944 it was raining down on London and Antwerp, killing thousands. The VA-2 was also the first human-made object to reach the edge of space. That duality, the rocket as both a tool of destruction and a vehicle for exploration, has haunted the space age ever since. When World War II ended, both the United States and the Soviet Union understood what German rocket technology represented. Operation Paperclip saw American forces recruit over 1,600 German scientists, including von Braun himself. The Soviets captured facilities, documents, and their own share of German expertise. Two superpowers, each armed with the seeds of the same technology, entered the most consequential technological competition in human history. The Soviets moved first. On October 4, 1957, they launched Sputnik, a polished metal sphere about the size of a beach ball, into orbit. It did nothing except transmit a radio beep. But that beep was heard around the world and it terrified the United States. If the Soviets could put a satellite into orbit, they could put a nuclear warhead anywhere on Earth. The space race was not about exploration at its core. It was about demonstrating military capability. The science was almost secondary. The Soviet Union kept winning the early rounds. They put the first living creature in orbit, a dog named Laika, in 1957. They achieved the first lunar impact with Luna 2 in 1959. And on April 12, 1961, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin completed a single orbit of Earth and became the first human being in space. His flight lasted 108 minutes. When he landed, he was an instant global hero. The Americans had not yet sent anyone to orbit. But here is what nobody talks about. Just 3 weeks after Gagarin's flight, NASA sent Alan Shepard on a suborbital hop that lasted 15 minutes. And behind the scenes, the American program was preparing something far more ambitious. President John F. Kennedy, facing enormous political pressure, stood before Congress on May 25, 1961, and committed the nation to landing a man on the moon before the decade was out. He made this promise when America had a grand total of 15 minutes of human spaceflight experience. The audacity of that declaration is difficult to overstate. What followed was the largest peacetime mobilization of scientific and engineering talent in history. At its peak, the Apollo program employed around 400,000 people. It consumed roughly 4% of the entire federal budget. Engineers were working around the clock, solving problems that had never existed before because no one had ever tried to do anything like this before. And they nearly failed several times. On January 27, 1967, the crew of Apollo 1, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, died in a fire on the launch pad during a routine test. The capsule had been filled with pure oxygen and was packed with flammable materials. The hatch could not be opened from inside. All 3 men died in less than 30 seconds. The program stopped completely. Investigations revealed systemic failures, corner cutting, and warnings that had been ignored. Apollo could have ended there. It did not. The capsule was redesigned, the program reorganized, and 21 months later Apollo 7 flew successfully. On December 24, 1968, Apollo 8 carried 3 astronauts all the way to the Moon and back. They did not land. But they orbited the Moon on Christmas Eve and read from the Book of Genesis on a live broadcast watched by an estimated 1 billion people. Astronaut Bill Anders took a photograph from the window, Earthrise, showing our planet rising over the lunar horizon. It became one of the most reproduced photographs in history and is widely credited with helping launch the modern environmental movement. Then came July 20, 1969. Neil Armstrong stepped off the ladder of the Eagle lunar module and onto the surface of the Sea of Tranquility. 6 Apollo missions in total landed on the Moon. 12 human beings walked on another world. The last person to stand on the Moon was Gene Cernan in December 1972. No one has been back since. The end of Apollo did not end space exploration. It redirected it. The 1970s brought the first space stations, Salyut from the Soviets and Skylab from the Americans. The 1980s brought the Space Shuttle, a reusable orbiter that flew 135 missions over 30 years. It also brought 2 catastrophic losses, Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003, each killing all 7 crew members. Those disasters forced painful reckonings about safety culture and the cost of maintaining aging, complex systems. Unmanned exploration has been relentless and breathtaking. Voyager 1, launched in 1977, has now traveled beyond the solar system and is the most distant human-made object ever built. The Mars rovers, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, and Perseverance have transformed our understanding of the Martian surface. The Hubble Space Telescope, launched in 1990 and famously repaired in 1993, has captured images of galaxies over 13 billion light-years away. The James Webb Space Telescope, operational since 2022, is pushing further still. The most striking shift in modern space exploration is the rise of private industry. SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk in 2002, developed reusable rockets that have dramatically reduced launch costs. Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, and a growing constellation of commercial companies are building infrastructure that was once the exclusive domain of nation-states. NASA's Artemis program aims to return humans to the Moon and establish a permanent presence there as a stepping stone to Mars. The history of space exploration is ultimately a history of human stubbornness. Of scientists dismissed and engineers who kept calculating. Of disasters absorbed and programs rebuilt. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to History Vault YT for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.